Accessing your polyvagal safety state is different than coping with emotional dysregulation. In this episode, I discuss the difference and also how you can utilize both. My name is Justin Sinceri. I'm a therapist and the creator of the Polyvagal Trauma Relief System. Welcome to Stuck Not Broken, where I teach you how to finally get relief from trauma using clear language and practical techniques. This podcast is not therapy, nor is it intended to be a replacement for therapy. In this episode, I have a short snippet from a Stucknaut Meetup with my course members. This is based on a question that they had brought up during this meetup. And at the end of the episode, I am going to share with you how you can be a part of these virtual Q&As. I hope you enjoy this. So the question is, how do you, or the topic I want to address briefly is how to recognize actual safety from as different than less danger. So what's the difference between I'm grounded in my safety state and I feel less crummy maybe, or I feel less defensiveness? And how, like, so am I actually grounded in safety, or am I just reducing my stuck defensive state or my dysregulation? So does that, the context make sense?
Is that coping?
I call that coping. So actually anchoring versus coping. And I think with therapy, what we do a lot with a very behavioral kind of focus is how to, when things come up, how do you deal with it? So I would call that you're coping, and maybe you're using it. There is some overlap, obviously. So maybe you're using a safety anchor to cope, and that's fine. So there's a difference between, like, I'm grounded in my safety state and I am getting through the moment, even though there could be some overlap. I think that one of the biggest indicators for me, there's two that I'll put forward. The first one is, are you actually able to notice your sensory experience? If you can be mindful enough to notice what your senses are telling you, that tells me you're pretty grounded in your safety state. You're grounded enough. Okay. So holding like an ice cube to like calm yourself, not to calm, but to distract yourself, that's not really mindfully experiencing a sense. It's like, it's effective for maybe not doing, self-harming yourself. Great. But that's a lot different than slowing down and taking in a sense and really noticing how it affects you. You know what I mean? So those are different things. Those are different levels of anchoring. One of them is like you're getting to the moment. The other one is you're really experiencing the moment. So that's a pretty big indicator to me of, are you able to access your sensory experience and mindfully experience it and be curious? Are you coming from curiosity? That's another big indicator is, do you feel curiosity? If you're feeling desperation and I want this to end and I'm going to do whatever I can, all my coping skills that I've learned, that's great. You can do that. Nothing wrong with that at all. Please do that. But that doesn't necessarily involve curiosity. That's more of like flight, fight, maybe. It might be a little freeze. But that's desperation and I want this to stop. I want it to go away. Versus, and what's it like for me to do fill in the blank? Like what is the experience for me of playing with this fidget? Like, I'm really curious how this impacts me. So that's curiosity, and that indicates if you're able to be curious, that tells me you're pretty well anchored in your safety state. If you want something to go away, if you want a feeling to stop, that tells me that you're probably more in a defensive state. With UDS, we want to come at the defensive states with curiosity. So BSA should be, or being able to stay anchored in your safety state should be well established, so that with UDS you can be curious about, you can come at UDS with curiosity and ask yourself, like, really, what's it like to be me? What's it like to be, what is it like for me to experience this stuck defensive state? Not make it go away, but just to actually experience it. So that would be another pretty big indicator of safety versus coping, which, is, am I curious? Am I actually curious? Can I notice my sensory experience? That'd be the first one. Second one would be, am I actually curious? And a third one could be, what's my level of impulse to connect when we're in our safety state? And this is covered in UDS in the impulse section, which is coming up next. When we're in our safety state, there's an impulse to connect. All of our different polyvagal states have impulses. From safety, the impulse is to connect. to connect with others or connect with the self. So that means when I'm in my safety state, I'm way more likely to go and play with my kids or give my wife a hug or talk to my coworkers, which I don't like to do usually. Even when I'm in my safety state, I do pretty darn well when I'm alone. So I know when I have this impulse to go connect with my coworkers, like, oh, I must be pretty well grounded in my safety state. So that the impulse to connect is a big part of that. If you're curious about what's happening inside of you and you have an impulse to just pause and breathe, that tells me that you're connected to the self. That tells me you're able to access your curiosity and your sensory experience and even your internal world. All that is a really good indicator that you're grounded enough in your safety state. Okay. Way different than I want this frustration to go away. What's wrong with me? How do I stop this? What's the coping skill I'm supposed to use to make this go away? I tend to segment. I think it's totally okay to just cope and deal with it and get through the moment. It's not easy to transition from that, especially if you haven't practiced or gone through or have the vagal brake strength developed and all that. Like it's really hard to transition from, or can be hard to transition from, especially without co-regulation, from that to mindful experiencing and curiosity and being in a safety state. I can do that in therapy with people because they have co-regulation and I'm walking them through it on your own. That's quite a challenge. And so I think it's completely okay to segment. I'm just dealing with the situation right now. I'm simply dealing with it. And when I'm ready, I'll come back to this, but I just need to deal with this, maybe take a break, do some more safety anchoring, and then come back and become more curious, or allow myself to become more curious about my inner experience that I was going through earlier. So I think it's okay to gap those out. Does that make sense? Just compartment, just to conceptualize. It's completely okay. I don't expect people to go from dysregulation to coping and then to mindful experiencing. That is quite a challenge. Can be quite a challenge. I don't want you to stay stuck. I don't want you to keep living in fear or in numbness or anxiety or rage. That's just what I want. I think it's possible to feel more curiosity, to feel more connection, to feel more confidence. If you're ready to take the next steps to get there, you can be a part of these virtual meetups as well. All of my course members get access to these twice a month and a discussion group as well. I have 3 courses for 3 phases of trauma recovery. The first one is learning the polyvagal theory and polyvagal 101. The second one is building the strength of your safety state and building safety anchors. And the third one is actively feeling and relieving your trauma in unstucking defensive states. All of these courses together make the polyvagal trauma relief system. All 3 phases of trauma recovery in one very comprehensive bundle, plus access to me and other course members through the virtual meetups like you heard in this one, and in an online discussion group. You can find out more about my courses on justinlmft.com. I will, of course, have a link for you in the description. Thank you so much for listening, fellow Stucknaut. I do hope that this episode has been a helpful resource for you in your process of learning about and applying the polyvagal theory to your trauma relief. Bye.
This podcast is not therapy, not intended to be therapy or be a replacement for therapy. Nothing in this creates or indicates a therapeutic relationship. Please consult with your therapist or seek for one in your area if you are experiencing mental health symptoms. Nothing in this podcast should be construed to be specific life advice. It is for educational and entertainment purposes only.